Suman, Lavanya ji, with your permission, shall we start?
Yeah. Just make sure
Sure.
I'm on the right Wi-Fi. Awesome.
Thank you everyone for joining in today's evening session, which we have every fortnight on a Friday at AIMA YLC. Today's session is extremely special and extremely close to my heart because that's one agenda I've been trying to put forward in YLC AIMA in my capacity, is how to get wider broad gender diversity in various forums. But I think completely different of leadership, but also some of the challenges which you face as you graduate towards leadership, and how, more importantly, challenges I think most of us are aware of, but more importantly, our guest speakers today will talk about how we can actually navigate those challenges because they are, they've already proven that how these challenges can be mitigated and managed. So it will be brilliant to learn about them. But before I introduce them, I just wanted to share some hard facts and numbers with you, which at least gives a bit of perspective that how big, how grave is the situation. We're all aware of the gravity of the situation. So I'll just share some numbers with you in terms. In India, if you talk about women, they occupy only 5% of executive chairs and 10% non-exec chairs. So only in India. Almost 62% of manager positions, pan 22% C-suite positions globally are held by women. Only 22%. Another interesting data point you'd be shocked to know is that women are twice as likely to be mistaken discrimination, where people assume that if there is a woman in a meeting room or discussion room, she would be the junior one. 35% of women in corporate sector. That's what. 64% of women have said that they face at work, where when they are trying to be more assertive, they are given pushback by their peers. 30% feel that gender is definitely an issue for them as they try to grow into a leadership position. Issues of the breaks which women take during maternity leaves and how they get re-employment, and the challenges they have to face post having a child. So I think these issues of gender diversity, parity, and the challenges which I've talked about, they have been talked about since decades. But I think now is the time that we actually have to hear from people who have faced them and they have solved these challenges to inspire the next generation of women leaders to not be bogged down by these challenges, howsoever grave and daunting they may appear, as we have seen, but actually inspire them that this is something which is possible, and these metrics and numbers will turn upside down, hopefully, in the years to come. And to talk about these grave issues and extremely important topic, we've got two amazing women, entrepreneurs in their own right. And evening is Miss Suman Mishra. That I personally, I may be biased, but I used to think that automotive is heavily dominated conventionally by the male industry. So it's so inspiring to see a woman leader like her. Is going to be the future. So it's so amazing to have a woman and green. Suman has driven a business transformation, data analytics, and customer insights across Mahindra and Mahindra Auto division for years. She has also managed capital allocation in the Mahindra Group. She is currently the CEO, Electric Last Mile Mobility Business, Mahindra and Mahindra. She has developed and delivered a path, led turnaround projects and transformation projects, delivering high impact strategies for the Mahindra Group. She's also a board member with CIE Automotive, Medville Ventures, Meru Cabs, MVSS, and also the winner of ET40 Under 40 Award 2019. So she has already achieved so much at such a young age. It's so inspiring you in today's evening session. we have is Miss Lavanya Nalli. And I'm sure all of us, we were joking, Lavanya, before you joined, that I think, Suman, are you already a customer of Nalli Sarees? Which is, I could be. So I think many of us here are customers already. It's a fantastic business, homegrown brand. We are so proud to have you with us today, Lavanya. Lavanya, for everybody's information, she's Sarees Private Limited. She's of experience across retail, strategy, operations, and e-commerce of her family business. She moved to India in 2013 into the e-commerce world as VP Revenue and Shopping Experience at Myntra, now Flipkart, and also led the private label e-commerce expansion efforts at the Nalli Group of companies and expanded its footprint to more than 38 stores. She is a frequent speaker at various industry events, Government of India's innovative efforts, and is also program initiative. Women leaders. She's also next gen and also ET 40 under 40. So we've got two amazing top women leaders in having this conversation with both of you. Before we get into details of the conversation, and I also request our audience participants to keep sharing your questions in the chat, I want to get some initial reaction I have raised and some of the issues which I have highlighted. What is your first reaction? Do these sound familiar to you? You care about the solution part of it. What's your initial thoughts and reactions when we talk about women in leadership and the challenge?
Yes, I think you already answered what my perspective would be. I'm aware, of course, I'm aware as someone. We're all aware of the numbers, but I think for me, something that I think about, right? Think about that, that there are not enough women leaders, so we can't be a woman leader. Those who want to walk the path, they walk the path, and hopefully, and I'm actually, the way we work is completely refreshed. I am sure we will see. You said automotive. I mean, gold standard. She broke the. Who are now breaking the so-called glass ceiling. But a shot, and hopefully the generation after that will have it a little bit easier, and the generation after that a lot easier, until this ceases to be a statistic. So that's just how I look at it. Sure.
Lavanya, your initial reaction?
So I think I completely agree with what absolute sense. At the same time, one is the statistics are real, and the real reasons could be. But it helps to look at things in a more holistic angle to understand those positions. Like there's Suman, there's I on the panel, but why aren't there more? So I think there is an aspect of, yes, those 100% true. The other aspect, and with the statistics, no, it understand why it is the way that it is. The question now would be to pivot from, here are the statistics, they're so bad, why is it this way? So that we can respond to it by really understanding what the real reasons are instead of reacting to it, which is how I think sometimes both organizations and governments are a little bit in danger of doing. Taking a reactionary measure to say, okay, this is an issue, now we'll just mandate certain things. Instead, let's understand, okay, this is an issue. What is it that caused this issue to become what it is today? And therefore, how do we go to the root cause of it and how can we address it there? And that's a larger, more nuanced discussion, which I think is what you're leading into.
Right. One of the conversations I've had mostly with women leaders and peers is that as you start to grow, as you know, when you start your career in any organization, one works in, let's say, HR or finance or marketing. But as you grow into an organization, into a leadership position, you are expected to take care of multiple roles, right? And that's one area where a lot of, in my conversations with women leaders I've come across that transition is a big challenge because typically, conventionally, people try to typecast that, okay, typically HR head position, okay, we'll have a woman leader. Of a mindset and biases is existing in most of the organizations, whether they say it transparently in front of everyone or not. But back of the mind, at the board level also, you would hear these conversations that, okay, if you want to lead a strategy position, we should look at, somebody with this level of experience or background. And the other issue is by the time you get into a leadership position, obviously they are young achievers like Suman, but typically you tend to be getting into board positions when you are, late 30s, 40, 45. And that's also a time when a lot of women leaders also sometimes take a personal break. How does that fit into the jigsaw puzzle? And what advice would you give to solve that problem? So that's a genuine problem, right? I mean, that's a very critical part. So a lot of women in my conversation, they're actually left to make a choice that they want to have a proper personal or family life, or they are more career. So society also typecasts you into this. Oh, you are only focused on your career. You don't care about your family. That labeling never happened for men. Problem in your experience, and what advice would you give? Suman, maybe you want to go first.
I can go first. Yes, when you are really in your mid-30s, accelerate. Then you need to have your child mid-30s, early 30s, whatever your thing is, and early 30s. And then, you have to go through some trade-off decision, prioritization. Quote what Shikha Sharma said on a lighter note, those people who lead the way. And she said, marry right. This is the number one. Spouse is sort of the wind beneath your sails, unless your spouse is the one who encourages you, energizes you. Genuinely quite challenging. So she did say marry right, but the other practical advice, the lateral movement for a little bit of time before you take the next acceleration, right? So you will have to prioritize at various stages. There was, of course, stages I was with consulting, and Lavanya also knows we were both in McKinsey at some point that you have to travel a lot. So at some point I wanted to have a child, and I said, let me just not go to a job that doesn't require. Energizing and challenging for me, it was with Cipla, but for me that was a trade-off I did, and I don't look back as, what if I were a man, I would not have to make that trade-off. It's a fact, right? But there is no what is the, it doesn't help me to think that way. So I always think, at every stage in life, you may have to prioritize a little bit. Sometimes it's a little bit more for work, sometimes it's a little bit more for your child, sometimes it's more for your family, sometimes it can be for your personal health. But you should be, you should be aware enough to make those trade-offs and sort of not really question, second guess what you really feel that the need of the time is. So yes, sure, everyone makes those trade-offs. And there's a certain period I said I'm not flexible to travel. And then there's a certain period when I said, okay, travel is no longer a problem. So I can go ahead. So the practical tips for this, of course, is, hopefully you married right. That is really, really important. And the second is, you need to build your help and support system. But the other thing that happens, and this is the personal, my personal understanding from talking to so many women, is sometimes after maternity, women want to take up a little easier job. because they want it a little bit easy. And I think this is the fatal flaw. You should take up equally challenging assignment because first of all, you're leaving the child to go to work. If the work is boring or it doesn't, keep you engaged, then very soon, sooner or later, you will say, why am I doing this? Let me just give up, let me stay at home. So I often find that they make experiment, you should try something without just and experience how. Do you need more support? Do you need a network? Do you need some other thing that can help you make it work? Versus, first of all, I choose to take a easier job because in my mind, I already made that switch and trade-off. This is the one tip that I have heard. It has helped me, is that post your maternity break, go for something that really engages and challenges you. Don't make that false trade-off, because if you went that path, now you made a career trade-off, then after some time you'll make one more, and then slowly you got off the path. So those are the few things, at least I have done, but it is a challenge and everybody goes through that. And, and also you have to respect the personal choices of those who choose to step away from the workforce. If it's what they feel is the right thing for them, then we should not be judging them. Yes, that's the choice they want. Approaches to building a network and support system. So I would just say, there is always a network of people who can help you around it.
And make the right trade-off. Do you also resonate with what's saying?
Right, I 100% resonate with. In fact, I say the same thing. And that will perhaps help clarify the thing, the concept a little bit. Why do I say marry, right? It's more a question of your spouse is going to be, as you advance in life, right? And whose life is also going to be interlinked to yours. While growing up, it might have been your parents, your siblings, and when you choose to get into a relationship with someone, you have an agreement with that person that, children together. Completely as if the other person didn't exist. So there has to be some sort of dialogue, trade-off, and compromise. Right? And so that really matters. Historically, it's always been the case, historically, and especially so in India, right? We have a very strong notion of roles in our society, and very gendered sort of roles. Right? The husband is the breadwinner, the woman sort of stays at home because logically have a child, and the child is totally dependent on her. Therefore, the husband will do this, and then the mother will do this. Of course, there's evolutionary sort of history to that as well, right? Like the hunters and the women and all of that. Now what's happening is it's become more and more egalitarian, right? But we're not fully there yet. Definitely not in India, and not even in many other societies. And so when we say marry right, or when I say marry right, what we really mean is make sure you have a very strong support system. For women, the fact is that biologically, you're the only person who can have a child. You can say everything about equal parents, and I do say that, and I do expect it of my husband. But at the same time, there were certain things when I had the child, like those 9 months, it was me who had to endure. Right? Biologically, it's your body that's going through those changes. Biologically, it's your body that's having to deal with that for the next 6 months and so on. So there is going to be a time in your life where if you choose to have children, like you do need a support system around you. Now, how much of a recovery time period? Some of that is luck, some of that is genetic, some of that is, all of those other aspects of it. But also, it is support system. We don't have in India the kind of support in a daycare who is not yet 2 years old. City like Bangalore. So my son is now 4 years old, and I tried, and I looked around, and I was very shocked when I couldn't find. And Suman may perhaps recall this, I don't know, from her McKinsey days or like from her time in the US, but you can put your kids in daycares as early as 6 weeks, right? And so, and they have like all of the support system and the safety aspects, and they've got qualified people who are able to kind of take care of a child of that age. There is none in India. Even in Bangalore, the earliest that I could find was someone who said that we could take my child in at 8 months, but he would be the youngest in the class, because technically they could take him in at 8 months. But the youngest that they had. And so you have to understand, what are you going to do when you're a double income household, nuclear family, without your parents or your in-laws in the same city, and you've got a child that young, and there is zero. These are the parameters that I hope the parental unit will start to discuss before the child comes along, because then that matters, your career matters. We're both doing really quite well, and we've chosen to have a child, and a child requires certain, it requires certain things. It requires, like, it's a huge system in place to ensure that, or you need to find. I hope that as a society we go to where we're not right now. I think what a lot of people do is come down for a week if I have to travel, right? But I hope we get to a point where it doesn't have to be us having to pull down grandparents, and then it becomes a case where grandparents can choose to be with their grandkids, and they don't feel like they have to be with their grandkids because the children don't have any other support system. So I think that really goes a long way.
Right. And you've made a very interesting point of this support system, which we all relate to, Lavanya and Suman. But you also, you've talked about the personal part of it. But can organizations help as well? Like, both of you are in leadership position in your respective organizations. Have you taken any steps to create an environment in your respective companies where women at home or do not have grandparents to pull into, the organization gives them some sort of a support system? Do we have any inspirational stories in from your experiences in organizations?
I can tell you from organizational perspective. I mean, it's the real problem. Perspective, we say, okay, if you need help, you get X thousand rupees of benefit for that period. Ramp off. We give them the flexibility, right? So some people step out, someone else comes in, and then they rotate back. So we are creating roles, but organization cannot really look after the child, right? For them, we can even create a play center. We can even create a daycare center, but the daycare center, unless you are in the business of daycare, so I will just outsource it to a daycare center. I can even sold. So that then what does that mother do from 6 months to 18 months? She has to rely. All of us do is both, have them all figure it out.
Especially if you're like a nuclear family, you just cobble together some tapestry and then you hope it doesn't fall.
Yeah, it doesn't fall apart when you need to travel, or like I said, I cannot travel. So that, that very rarely will I travel for the first few years until I could, figure out a more solid system. But this is a real challenge and each of us is dealing with it. But, yes, if you had a daycare which would take and we could put them in the office buildings, wouldn't that be nice? Then I've heard the second level of questioning. So do you expect me to bring my child in the metro trains of Bombay and put them in the put them in your daycare center? Is that even a realistic solution? Because most of our, our colleagues who may not be very privileged, or whether they travel on the local trains from very far away, are they really going to carry the little child in the local train and bring them in the daycare at home? So we said, okay, daycare near your house also chalega, near your building, near your house, money. I mean, but beyond that point, the solution has to be for each one. And what I'm seeing most people is, relying really on their grandparents. That's the real answer. What most of us have.
But with work from home, do you see? With work from home coming in, do you see any interim solution where, or as an organization, it's beyond the point? Do you feel it's difficult to have people working remotely?
Option. I have to say it is an option. It is not the best option because the work. The Stone Ages, when now they have to again take care of the house and the family all together and take care of work all at the same time. I think if you had the support, right, you are there and your kid is there, maybe you can see them from time to time. But if you have to do everything at home and then do the work from home, I think this causes a lot of mental health strain on a lot of people. So, this is a mixed bag. Again, it will be an individual choice. But of course, this option, what it has done, Kartik, I will say, forget this particular category of women who are like in that little bit or who are new. This work from home has allowed us to bring them back into the workforce. I don't hesitate to tell you, it's like an audit department. Audit traditionally was considered key, you have to late night reporting, taxing, this, that, so no women can work there. But now that department has 30% women because everyone is doing it virtually, right? There is no sitting at late night and doing it. You're doing it late night to hire women. I'm not talking about this particular maternity transition. I think we have talked to that topic about death. But in general, both those who are taking a break from workforce and those who are new in the workforce, we have been able to attract them to some of the difficult functions. I think everybody's trying, right? But it is yet to be seen. Does it really push us a stage forward or did it regress us? I think you must have seen some of the statistics that a lot of the unemployment that was caused in the pandemic was for women, because a lot of women had to step back with the loss of the entire support system, especially in no more maids for a lot of period of time. Many of the women had to take up that load and therefore it resulted in them quitting the workforce. Similar story in America, right? So loss of income, loss of employment, and therefore and the dual burden of work and home has become very aggravated during the COVID. So it has been a double-edged sword. But, in some pockets, we are able to create opportunities, like pockets which were traditionally thought, oh my God, you could never do that unless you were in the office till midnight, late night, every day. And in some pockets, unfortunately, we have lost people because the burden has fallen on them because they lost their support system.
Right. But that's a fair point, and I can understand in an organization like Mahindra and Mahindra, there is a structure to it, how you work. But Lavanya, in your case, yours is still a sort of a more privately held family business sort of an environment. Are you able to also take some of these calls to create a more positive environment for women
so
and help them with this support system?
I'm going to make a more controversial statement, right? I actually don't believe in the long run it is good to have a dual system for men versus women in the workforce. And that is not the role of organizations, that's the role of government, and that's the role of society. Organizations are built with certain purposes in mind, right? We have a fiduciary duty to our stakeholders, we have a duty to an obligation to our investors, and you want to do business the right way and the ethical way. That's at a very high level, that's the purpose of organizations. And that's the reason why we have performance reviews and you have employees and you have roles and all of that. We can never take over the role of a family or a government or any of these other aspects because We can't. That's not what we're set up for. Having said that, how do we ensure that the organization is able to have a more conducive environment for, to encourage more women to thrive and really to realize their potential? Because there are a lot of women who make excellent workers, who are excellent performance, excellent managers in any capacity. So the way that I would look at it is, I don't actually like to look at it from the standpoint of, okay, what are the policy failures at a societal level, or, at a societal level, and us trying to substitute that. It's not going to, because to Suman's point, she's exactly right. Okay, you will get a daycare, that's fine, right? And then what? Someone says, okay, but my child is below the age of 18 months. So let's say you will get a daycare facility where you have all of those trappings, right? Then there's a cost burden. Then that cost has to be loaded somewhere, right? So you can do that, but I don't think you can serve those needs. Those needs have to be served. So that's the point to try to say, that the needs of women is the needs of society, right? Those needs have to be served. Having said that, what organizations can do now, number one, what I do is to ensure that, okay, look, when we look at men or women, we shouldn't have, it's more of a mindset training. Right? Every worker has to be recognized on the merit of their work, on their performance. Everyone's got certain potential. That's why, like, they come into an organization, and the idea is like somewhere between the individual's temperament and their skill level and so on, as well as the organizations realize their potential and productive member of society. And therefore, because they are a happier, more productive member of society, they're able to go back to their homes, because work is just one aspect of your lives. They're able to go back to their homes, and they're able to be, have that confidence, have financial independence, have all of those things. So when the kind of training that I would do, a lot of that is actually, apart from policies are there, but I'm not going to talk about it for the reasons that I said. Did a good job as well in that. But what I will talk about, what can we as managers, what can we as individuals, what can we as people who exist within organizations do to progress this goal? If you're in a hiring position, don't look at a woman and give her a job because she's a woman. I don't think anybody here does that anyway. And so I don't want you to do that. Second thing is, if you're in a more senior position, please don't make policies where you raise a burden. How do I say it? If you were to hire a woman, automatically she comes with a burden attached. And what I mean by that is, just because I am a woman, if I take leave, there's maternity leave, you have to pay for it. But if he's a guy, he doesn't have parental leave, right? So then what are you doing? You're actually disincentivizing your employees from hiring women. So you can say everything and have the policies and have daycares, but then you have these conflicting set of policies which go against the grain, right? And so this is the reason why I say the best way to do it is actually to do it at an individual level, and to say, look, if you're a performance-driven organization, you're a performance-driven organization. And to say, this is what we stand for, this is what our values are. Now at Nalli, for example, yes, it is a performance-driven organization, but we're a long-standing business, right? 90 plus years in existence. So we look at, we like to attract, and I think we also self-select employees who look at things in the long run and holistically. Is this an organization where I can build my career, have a legacy at whatever point that I leave it? Many people stay on and they're extremely tenured at Nalli, 20 years, 30 years of service. Right? And I'm not just talking about salespeople, I'm talking about our entire senior team, in fact. Our CFO's been with us 30 plus years. Our VPs, most of them 20 plus years. There's a reason why that's happened. Can we do the same thing? So if you want to attract people who are high performance, who have all of the qualities and the values that you look for, you've got to put that up front and then remove anything that gives either an advantage or some sort of hidden disadvantage to gender. And I think that really is the only way. And of course, people will transition through different phases in their lives. Even a man, if he is the only child of parents, of aging parents, and he has to take care of his aging parents and they have ailing health, that is also a life situation that he's going through. The way that an organization would handle those situations is women are going to go through similar life transitions.
Mentioned about the issue of women coming with a proverbial liability of sorts and the break during maternity. How do both of you also view in your organization women who actually spend time with their children and then they want to rejoin? How are they perceived? What kind of an opportunity do they get? Side of the story, because many of them, like including my sister, for example, I know when she took a break and probably lesser than or equal to what she had left her job at, and she was in technology, she used to work in tech. So how do we handle that? Because that also comes with a lot of mental health and sort of stress that, oh, I was already at the peak of my career and I could have been a VP
Yes.
or whatever, but now I'm starting again.
Yeah. So I can go, there's a couple of things. One, for everyone who's watching and who's in that position. My friend Neha Bagaria, a phenomenal person and phenomenal woman leader, she started and founded Jobs for Her, JOBS for her, .com, which is literally for this, for women who've had a break in life and want to re-enter the job force, highly qualified, but have just had a break. And now, they've got this thing where they come with their resume and everyone looks at it and says, oh, you didn't work for 2 years. So that's one, right? So that's a little, because you asked and because I think from an organizational perspective, I believe that my obligation and my duty to every employee is, and I think of the employee as like an extended family, right? And part of that is from being in a family business setting. It's basically to clarify and say, look, the job is yours. You come straight back in. There's nothing, right? You come straight back in, you pick up where you left off. But you pick up where you left off. This is the role. This is what the role entails. These are the hours that I require. If it is a job that requires you to be in office, certain businesses, like if it's an inventory-based business, you can't do remote work. But there are certain other things. If you're in digital marketing, or if you're in other kinds of departments, of course, you can do work from home, whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter, right? So whatever that role is, we expect the same level of performance, right? Because a job is not a favor. A job is a job. It's a commitment. It's a commitment on both sides. So you come in good faith and you put in the best and you work your best. Right? And we recognize that and then we reward you for it, right? It's a contract and an obligation and a bond between the organization and the employee. So that's the place where if there are people who want to come back, and we do have that, we tell them, look, it's the same as before. I understand your life circumstances might have changed. If they have changed, then that's for you to figure out and for you to think. If you want a reduced capacity, then it will be a reduced role. If you're saying, no, you know what, I've got my support system all sorted out. I don't really need a reduced capacity. My child is in school, or I figured out some way. He's young enough. He's too young to be in school, but I figured out a way where he's taken care of and I can really dedicate the hours that is required of me. I want to go straight back into the workforce. You come straight back into the workforce. But that's the thing. It really is a question of, there's a certain role and there's a requirement of that role. Right? It's also not right for the other members of a team. So to put it bluntly, right? So let's say you're working in a team and you've got 5 people and you all have interlinked interdependencies. And there's one person who is not delivering at the level that he or she is supposed to. It doesn't matter for what reason. Maybe he has an ailing parent, right? Maybe she has she's dealing with a sister who's got like some disability or something. Maybe she's got a young child at home and she doesn't have a support system. It doesn't matter. But you all depend on each other, right? Over time, what happens is resentment builds up because you're picking up the slack for this person. And so those are the places where I feel that, we have to treat it like we've got to be very clear on what is the roles and the duties and the obligations of an organization. And of course, take a humane approach. Ultimately, these are people.
Right. Suman, do you concur, or do you have any different views?
I'm actually not sure what the specific.
The question was that when you pick up where you left.
Yes.
And that's sometimes also a bit stressful, because in those 3, 4, 5 years.
But there is no alternative. I mean, I'm not understanding why this is a question. I mean, if you left as a VP, you're not going to join back as a president because you took 4 years off to raise somebody. I'm just not understanding the question. You wouldn't do it for a man, you will not do it for a woman, you will not do it for anybody, because that person only has the experience of a VP and has not necessary capabilities, to be a CEO or whatever your equivalent level, whatever that level is. But is that the question? Because that to me is not a question. The point is, how do you deal with that? So you may need some, what I have seen. I don't want to answer that question, because to me that's a non-question. But I will tell you what I have seen when some people face. They jump at the first opportunity they get without actually negotiating what is due. So sometimes they take less than what they can do, because they are, as I told you, they self-discount, they self-select themselves out of it. Ki chalo job to mil gaya, acha hai. That is the one thing, when you go to work, you have to demonstrate high performance. I think the thing I didn't mention upfront is, if you are really trying to rise to the leadership position, it is not debatable. I mean, the prerequisite is that you are a high performer. So just simple prerequisite is to be a high performer, since you're talking about women in leadership, not just women doing jobs. And if you want to be a high performer, you certainly don't want to be treated as if, you are some second-class citizen who can only work 5 hours and will need a break for the 3. We can manage around everything. We can manage around sort of, do you need a feeding room so you can go pump, do you need some flexible days, around out of your 30 days, do you want 4, 5, 6 flexible days? These things, your flexible days where you want to work from home or come in a little later, go back a little later. As a large corporate, we can manage around these things. May not be possible in a store run format, as Lavanya said. But the one non-negotiable is that it has to be high performance. So just simple, that's all I will say, is that no matter what the rule is, you have to deliver at the highest peak at the highest level of performance to get promoted and to go on to the leadership role. You can join back, you took a 4-year off, you will be 4 years behind your colleague. But for me, the important thing, why does it matter? Why does it matter to you? You took 4 years off to be with your child. It's the choice of the trade-off that you made. So now you go on and you become in the next 4 years, you become the president or whatever else you thought you should be, right? So for me, that's why I just said I don't want to respond to that particular question, because nobody's going to promote you because you took a break. But when you come back, if you come back fully on and you demonstrate high performance, you will be promoted. There is no doubt that you won't be. But like I said, you have to take up the challenging opportunities whenever you return back to workforce, and you have to demonstrate that you can perform. Otherwise, literally, there is no other path to leadership, in my view, at least.
No, agreed. I think 2 very valid points of being a performer, and then second, not discounting. I think that was something which I was also wanting to allude to, that sometimes you discount that, okay, at least I'll get back into the workforce. That's a fair point. The other thing, if you look at some of the other countries, one of the views people have taken is, when we look at the board level, to have some sort of a percentage representation of women to show diversity and inclusion. What are your thoughts on having that sort of a number, that there has to be a certain percentage of women in a certain forum or a committee or a board? What do you feel about it? Do you think that's a solution? Or
yeah, go on.
I can give you a very simple point of view here. Okay, so if you're hiring for the regular rank and file, what I ask my HR to ensure, and we are trying to put it as a metric, is the number of resumes you had in the interview position. So did you have a fair representation of women in the pipeline? So let's say you are hiring for one role. Was it like all 10 are male resumes, or did you manage to put 30-40% of women resumes? Because if you did the hard work of finding the women, you're likely to find very good women who will then naturally get selected. We don't mandate any percentages in the role, but we want to put in the pipeline, right? So if you worked hard, if your recruiting agency worked hard to get this into the pipeline, you will naturally have the other part. That is my normal view. I don't believe in quotas and percentages in a regular running company. On the board, I have a slightly different point of view. Because, board is not staffed by anybody, right? A board is staffed by people who will add value to the board. So I feel that you look at any board, what I feel is the board was an old boys club, and by having this percentage quota, at least it put women on the seat. And these are not normal women. These are women in senior leadership positions in their corporates who are getting these roles. So it's giving them a seat at the table, at which point then they will add value to the company, and then this becomes sort of a natural thing. This is the most valuable member of our board, etc. So for me, though, I have two different perspectives. One is on the rank and file, fill it in the pipeline, don't mandate at the end. But in the board, I'm okay to take it, because I know a company will not staff the board with someone that they did not. They have to say, "No, I put so and so is on the board of Mahindra and Mahindra." It has to be the so-and-so who is worthy of that position. So, and it allows women to have a seat at the table. So for me, that's a little different, a nuanced view I have about the board versus the regular role.
Sure. Yeah, Lavanya, you wanted to share some perspective.
Same thing, increase the pipeline, make the funnel really wide in the beginning, right? And then don't compromise on the standards, which no organization does and no organization should, because there are genuinely enough strong people strong women who will make it through, right? But the idea is to make sure that your funnel is big enough in the beginning. Only then will you have folks who come in at every level and will go through the ranks. Right? So that's one. In terms of the aspects about policies and quotas and all of that, like I said, I can't really comment on it at all. Some of these are mandated, and I like what was said in a defense conference that I went to, and because there was this mandatory requirement that now there should be like some X number of women on boards of certain companies if you meet certain criteria, right? That's what all happened. Now, of course, like if you mandate something and you have to be compliant, then people will do whatever to be compliant. I think everybody started getting their mothers and their daughters and their sisters on the board. But then there was this rule that said that no, but now the person cannot be related to you. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, men who are related to you, right? So that's the issue with mandating policy, right? It's the easiest thing to do. It's the laziest thing to do. It doesn't fix the issue. The issue is, why do we not have sufficient representation when we have real talented professional women out there? That's the question, right? Not to say, why don't we have sufficient representation? Let's do this now. Let's put a policy. Right? So I think that's the way that I would want to look at it. The only way is you have to widen the funnel. And from an organization standpoint, it really starts from the time that somebody enters an organization. But from a societal standpoint, it starts from childhood. It starts from women education. It starts from girls' education. It starts all the way through.
Right. And controversial discussion, so to say, that women who are at leadership level, but how they can play their part in also grooming more women leaders, mentorship. Is that something which sort of comes as an obligation, or is there can be a structured way and mentor and groom the next gen of women leaders? what are your views on formalizing that? Or do you already do it in your capacity, in your organization? But I know there are some industry bodies as well, all industry.
Yeah. On this, no, see, the why you formalize? You can formalize it. Formalizing benefits, right? It indicates to people that this is a strategic priority, it matters to us, and therefore we want champions. So that's the benefit of it, and there are other benefits. One of the drawbacks of having very, like I said, with policy, if you have a formal structure, people will do anything just to hit the requirement, right? And then it becomes nothing but a rubber stamp. Okay, you said I have to do it, now we have this. You said I need to have a diversity like officer, now I have a diversity officer. Then ultimately what happens? Right? So I think I would take it in a different way. What is the real objective? If you truly want your women, if you truly want your employees to thrive, including women, right? Because they make up half the society and they are a talented bunch. Then whether you have a formal structure or not, what are the actual, whether it is in hiring, whether it is in training, whatever it is, right? That makes it a truly nurturing environment for women. And that includes mentorship. That could be one-on-one mentorship. That could be in a formal body. It could be any of that. In terms of formal capacities, there are larger larger independent mentoring related organizations which do excellent work. So Kalari has one, CXXO, of which I am part of. There's a few others that I am part of, and a lot of them are very women oriented, right? And those are ways in which I feel that it provides a safe environment for women who are in their 20s, 30s, at whatever stage in their careers and in their lives, for them to have a role model to look up to and to say, okay, you're someone who is probably 10 years down the line. You're successful. How did you get there? What helped you? How can I get there as well? And I think those are the ways which truly, that really to me feels like a much more impactful program than just having a formal program. You can have a formal program, you can pair up mentors, but then really it comes down to the quality of the mentors, the quality of the interaction, the quality of the, of the effort, and truly how invested and passionate someone is.
Right. Sumanji, your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think she's articulated it most comprehensively and well as well. I don't know. You may want to take some of the audience questions.
No, yeah. Take a couple of audience questions and then you can take up, both of you, depending on what you want to take up. One is Dr. Nidhi has asked a very sort of a straight shooter question that although there are performer women in the pipeline, but point blank, why do we have so many, reducing number of women in the leadership positions even now, even though the pipeline is strong, and what can we do to fix that problem? And the second one, which we can talk about, is that if you had a problem, one problem which you could solve globally to fix the problem of gender bias and diversity, and if you were in charge to solve that, which one would you solve?
I did the first one. I mean, there is a entry, but it is a leaky bucket. If you map any of our organizations and you see women are there at the entry level, and then there is a hole in the middle and there's a chasm at the end. So the women never made it from one end to the chasm. So there is not good pipeline for the middle. I mean, literally so many went and made trade-offs or got life circumstances which didn't allow them to continue in the workforce, and or chose that this is not worth it. Yeah, I'll do something on my time. I'll do something part-time. I will go to the gig economy, whatever. They made their choices, and I am sitting here looking at my diversity funnel, and I see that there are, we start with 30. We are not even 5 at the end. So where did they all go? But they drop in the middle bucket. So that's the pipeline is elusive. It's there so that's why we are trying very hard to retain them. So Please don't go away. Please stay. What can we do to make sure you are happy here? But a lot of them still make the choices, Kartik, because it is hard. All said and done, it is a hard time for many women. First, many drop when they get married, they travel, they go to where their spouses are. This is the first choice they did. I wish they married in the city where the spouses are continued working for us. But a lot of them say, getting married, moving to so-and-so, quitting. Okay, great. Then the other half got married, had baby, don't want to come back to the workforce, quitting. Got married, had baby, tried for a few months, it's not worth it, quitting. So we don't have a healthy middle funnel. Only when the middle is healthy, then you can talk about the final. And it's the same for all organizations. So it's not like you can literally get a lot of senior women talent and bring them on board. Most of us are now trying. In fact, Mahindra are employees within this, but in general for helping women, we have a Nalli program where we do a lot of CSR work to train young women and so on across, or in a supply base or so on. We've made it a priority, but there is a leaky buckets which has to be fixed. I think that's the thing. It's not solved. Really, they will come out at the end. You need some resilience, some luck, some support system, and a very good partner to make it through to that end.
Yeah, in fact, since you mentioned Nalli, I just forgot to ask this question to you, that we're not even talking about, we're talking about performer women and so on and so forth. We're not talking about women who do not have access to the mainstream employment market and get them to leadership positions. Or is that not even a priority of the discussions right now, do you think?
I mean, these are different questions and different problems to solve, right? So there are for each question, there are a set of solutions that everybody is trying. Clearly, nobody has found the answer, because if it was, we wouldn't be having this conversation. In some organizations, there is a good pipeline of women, and there are a lot at the top. In one of my former organizations, I work with 30% at the top, 50% at the entry level. Their problem is solved. We don't have this discussion on diversity. In some organizations, it's not solved. So we continue having this discussion on diversity. How do we motivate, cajole, encourage, both the leaderships to hire more women and the women to stay longer. So yeah, and as far as the underprivileged, like these are the organizations, right? Like Nalli, where we do our work, we try to educate them, at least give vocational education, if not anything else, so that they can start working. I worked with a little school and I set up 3D printing, a couple of 3D printers. This is near Shakan. And, those girls, they really, really loved it. But then we quickly, they really loved it. Realized, okay, to teach them 3D printing, I need to first teach them English, because all those computer codes are written in English. Okay, then I need an AC room where the printers will teach them 3D printing. So it's not easy to leapfrog so far, solving each of these issues and then maybe give them the experience or the desire to go and do something themselves. So we are trying a lot of things, but it is far from solved, I would say.
Right. So we've got final 2 minutes, 1 minute each, final advice, words of wisdom, suggestions to future women leaders, how they can be inspired and take up a leadership role despite all the challenges that you mentioned. Starting with you, Lavanya ji.
So I'd say a couple of things. Number one, get your support system, right? Your husband and whoever else is going to be closest to you and in your life, so that as you go through life transitions, you have your home set up, it's somewhat stable, right? And a partner who understands you and who's going to ensure that your goals and your priorities are equally important, right? So that's one. Number two, find a role model in the professional life. And whether it is through a formal program or an informal program, it doesn't matter. A lot of people, you can just find them and you can write to them. Ultimately, like a mentor-mentee relationship is a human connection. So the mentor also needs to find something in you that, some kind of a bond and some kind of almost an attraction, right? Like it's that way. And as a mentee as well, I would encourage you to look for someone who you see a little bit of yourself in, or who you aspire to be like. There has to be some similarity. And if that person is a woman, and if that person is in the professional capacity, which is what I hope that you will do, then you have a really strong guide in life where you can ask them. And it's a little bit like having a crystal ball of someone else who's very similar to you in mindset, temperament, whatever it is. And you can ask them all of your questions and say, hey, look, as I'm navigating these aspects, how do I, what do I do? How do I progress? And they'll always be that sort of guide, hopefully for you, as you progress in your careers.
And I'll just add one more to what she mentioned. Raise your hand for. Do not shy away. Anybody gives me a difficult project, and don't there is this tendency, can I do it? Can I not do it? Oh my God, will I be successful? I think it's better not to have that feeling. Just raise your hand at the difficult assignment, back yourself, be yourself, and I'm sure you'll be successful.
And Lavanya, you inspired a lot of women leaders today, and a lot of us are going back motivated and to actually solve this problem. So thanks for energizing us and sharing your
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Suman, Lavanya. I think we lost Kartik. Thanks for joining us today. Wonderful session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lavanya, for joining.